Here. And we are off. We are live today. Hey, everybody. I'm super stoked to be here with Jeremy Slate. I want to say Jeremy Ryan Slate, but it seems like the Ryan has left the building. The name has left.
I use it just because I was named after an actor named Jeremy Slate, and the only time I ever heard that is when I was in trouble as a kid. If I heard Jeremy Ryan Slate, I knew I was screwed.
Wow. Well, but it was on your Facebook for a while, and I think it's gone now, right?
Well, because it's the same as my fan page, so a lot of people started getting confused. Like, they're like, well, which one's you? Which one's your fan page? And then, like, we recently got the blue check mark on my fan page, so I'm like, all right, well, I should probably drop it on my personal.
Wow, and that makes sense. I love that. So I've been curious. So I thought I was going to be talking to Jeremy Ryan Slate. Now I'm talking to Jeremy Slate.
Just not as cool, I guess, right?
Yeah, either works, I think. The side note question. The blue, you got the blue, like the verification on Facebook.
Yeah.
Was that something that just, they just said, hey, you're verified, or is that something you applied for and it took a while? I'm just curious for those that might be listening that are into social media.
So for me, it's getting a lot of media really helps you do it. Like a lot of high level press and stuff like that. Like, I don't know why you don't have it, honestly, Corey, with all the stuff you've done with Entrepreneur and stuff like that. But like a lot of that stuff counts for that type of thing. And then you can apply for it. I got rejected for a number of years, and then we finally got through recently. Well, I have it on Twitter too, but that's the only other place I have it.
So now that's on the fan page, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so that your answer as to why I wouldn't, that's the answer, is because it's on the fan page, and my fan page is dead on arrival. It's kind of sad. I think there's 6,000 people in there.
Yeah.
But I found that every day I was having to, and this is not a knock to Facebook, it's just in general, I had to pay more and more money just to reach the same people I reached the day before. And I just kind of eventually said, I'm juggling so many things, I'm just going to leave that. And
you know what you got to do, man? So what you do, you pixel your website, and then you only run promotion at people that are just retargeted for your site, and you spend like a couple bucks a day, like almost nothing, but you'll get reach because it's people that are actually looking for you.
All right, so I will get to be a value bomb this early. There's a value bomb. I will actually start doing that. I have somebody that's just starting to work on some of my stuff, and he's been doing this stuff on the social media side for quite a while, and I've watched what he's been doing. So I'm going to bring that to his attention in case he's not planning to do that.
Cool.
But yeah, the Facebook, I kind of left it just where it's at, but maybe I should revisit it. So that's probably for another day, but thank you. I was curious with that. So Jeremy, where I wanted to, start is you are working on a new book. You are doing a crowdfunding campaign. I want to say a Publishizer campaign, but I understand a lot of people wouldn't be as familiar with Publishizer as maybe Kickstarter or GoFundMe, because Publishizer is obviously very niche. It's a very specific type of audience and market. So first of all, can you tell us why you decided to use crowdfunding? And I believe this is your first book. Is that correct?
It is my first book, so that my face will not be on the cover. I was told that is the hugest no-no for your first book. Don't put your big ugly mug on the book, so I won't do that. But the reason I chose that, and you can speak to this too, since you've written a great book as well. But like as an author, when you kind of go with a publisher without coming up with any money, a lot of times you lose your rights to things. And when you do it through Publishizer, since you're bringing money to the table through this crowdfunding campaign, you keep a lot of your rights and things like that, but you still get all the distribution and everything else that you would get from working with a publisher, which is super, super important because, like you're a speaker, like you do a lot of keynotes. You don't have to pay somebody every time you do a keynote because you license your content to someone else. And I feel like that's really, really, really important. And a lot of people don't understand that. Like I've had a lot of talks with publishers over the years, and unless you have a really good intellectual property lawyer, one of the first things they're going to talk about is owning your content. You know what I mean? And that's really, really going to hurt you, especially if you're a speaker or content creator or anything like that. So that was really important to me. But also, if you're trying to hit a bestseller list, it's really important to have a lot of, book volume ready to go. So, we're looking to have, 1,000 books sold on day one when this book releases before, we actually had the book out. And that's why we're kind of doing the pre-launch campaign. So it does a lot of different things, which is super cool because I want to make a huge impact with this. And setting it up in the right way is going to allow us to do that.
So there's a couple of things I want to unpack there. One of the things you said was about the, I love that you brought that up because almost zero, I'm going to say no authors speak about that either on my, I don't enough, and most authors I talk to don't speak about that.
Also, most authors are self-published anyway. You know what I mean? So that's not something they have to think about.
Yeah, they're not giving up anything typically anyway.
Yeah.
I was negotiating with a publisher before, and this is a little plug for my book, but only to say when I was doing this with this book, when I was talking to publishers, that was something I didn't even realize I had to be worried about until I started talking.
I didn't either.
To the publisher. And they were like, okay, well, you have two options with us. And people talk about hybrid publishers. So they were like a hybrid, but also traditional. And I don't know if they were both because they wanted to just push everybody through the hybrid. But they're like, okay, well, you can come with us as traditional. You don't pay any money, but we own 80% of everything and blah, blah. and you have to pay us to do your talk. You know, I'm like,
sneaky book publisher.
Yeah, well, at least they told me up front. But I said, the talk that I've been doing for years, you guys now, I would have to actually pay you. Well, they said, well, we technically own the rights to the content in the book. Or you can pay us this amount of money and you keep the rights. Yep. Well, then I'm just paying a publisher to put my book out, really. But I didn't know that, Jeremy. So I'm glad you brought this up because a lot of new people going into the publishing world wouldn't realize this. And it's something you want to factor in. And I will add part of why I went with Morgan James, which, by the way, was done for me through going with Publishizer. And then I'm going to circle back to your book. But with Morgan James, I get to keep all those rights. They didn't want to own this stuff. Like, they're like, we want to work together as a partner, but we don't own your copyright. But most publishers wouldn't be that generous. So,
and we're in a weird world in publishing now too, because publishers do that, and they also, though, they're also not going to give you a quote unquote book deal if you don't have a large enough audience, because they also want it to cost them less money and own all your stuff. It's like, then what's the point, man? I feel like I just got beat up and then they took my house.
It's so true. If you're going to have to do all the marketing, then why are you going with a publisher in the first place?
Correct.
In the sense that you're going to make way more net profit by having it self-published. Obviously, we all know the reason to go with a publisher is distribution.
Correct.
But again, how much is that distribution worth? So to circle back to the point of your book, now the book, it's called Extraordinary, right? Is that going to be the official name?
The name is going to be Extraordinary. The subtitle we have right now, and I'm not sure if it's it yet. We're still playing with it, but it's How to Overcome Extreme Adversity and Live Your Best Life. I don't know if it quite does it for me yet, but we're still working on that. But the book is called Extraordinary. It's the 6 lessons I've learned from the extraordinary individuals I've had on the podcast. And
so let's talk about that for a minute, because I always feel like with books, sometimes when we're marketing them, we miss the point about what is the reader going to get from the book. We do all this marketing about, I worked out so hard in this book, I did all this stuff, you've known me for a while, or you discovered me because I did a talk, and you should buy my book because I have a book. But I find like a lot of books even that I bought them because of the people, but I really didn't understand what the content in the book was. So can you tell us what a reader's going to get from reading this book? Like you mentioned about the interviews you've done, is it going to be them learning these unique things you've learned from all these interviews?
And the interesting thing about it, Corey, is like the reason this book happened is actually because of what I wanted people to learn, not because of just like, hey, I'm writing a book. Because for 4 years, I told myself it wasn't the right time yet. Like it was finally like, hey, this message is ready and we have to get it out there. So for me, like what we've really done is we've taken a look at these 6 principles that over 800 interviews have taught me. And the crazy thing is, despite people having very different backstories, very different lives, there's 6 things they really hold in common in their life. And so what we're really going to be doing is talking about what these principles are, how people applied these in their life so that people can understand that you can actually apply this yourself and become extraordinary. Because I find so many times that there's a lot of people out there, and I'm one of them, man. Like we think things are one way, and we find out society lied to us. We find out that, what we were told is greatness isn't greatness. What we were told is the way you create a life, on your own terms is not. So I want to help somebody with these principles create the roadmap that they want to become their own definition of extraordinary. And I think that's important as well, like not someone else's definition of extraordinary.
I get it, and I dig it because it's where I've spent a lot of my time as well. Totally get it. Now, here's the question. I noticed on the Publishizer page, which we're going to tell people how to get. I have put the link as well in the comments here, but we're on, I think, about 10 platforms. So for those of you that maybe don't see it on the platform you're on, and Jeremy, there might be a quicker way to go here, but Publishizer, and that's with a Z or a Z at the end, .com/extraordinary.
Yes.
I don't know okay, perfect. And so one of the things I was reading about, some of the people, like in the description, some of the people that you've had the opportunity to interview, and, I'm seeing one of the members of the Eagles, Grant Cardone, who I think a lot of listeners and viewers here would know, Seth Godin, of course, who just as many would know, Tom Bilyeu. So can you tell us, is there, and that's this question I get all the time, so I'd like to hear where other people stand, but is there somebody that stands out above the rest? I mean, I know you probably love all your interviews, but is there somebody that stands out above the rest that just delivered this knowledge that just blew your mind or knocked you on your floor?
That's a tough question, man, because I feel like it's each one in their own right. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things I've gotten from particular interviews. Like, do you remember the Dos Equis beer commercials?
I do, yes.
The most interesting man in the world, stay thirsty, my friends. So his name's Jonathan Goldsmith, and I've had him on the podcast. And one of the things I was going to say, one of the most interesting things about him, like that's horrible, but it's true. One of the things I found very interesting about him is he was famous in the 60s, 70s, and 80s as like a cowboy movie actor, which you see him and you're like, what? He was in cowboy movies? He couldn't even ride a horse, by the way, which he has a funny story about that. And then in the 90s, he retired. And then he gets famous in 2007 for doing these commercials. And everybody says to him, well, wow, you so late in life, in your 60s, you become famous as this actor, you know, like, how did you push for so long? He's like, what are you talking about? I was a multimillionaire in network marketing in the 90s. I just blew all the money. And I think a lot of times the thing that really spoke to me about that is he really defined success for himself and didn't let others define it for them. And that's what I really find about people that are extraordinary. And that's what really impacted me there. You know, he just went on his own definition of success and he didn't care what other people think. And that's one of the key things I keep finding about these extraordinary people is they don't let others define their success for them. Because I know early in my life, and I'm sure in yours as well, like I defined success by what my parents and what my town and what everybody else thought it was. And you make the wrong decisions because of that, because you're doing them from someone else and not for yourself. And it's really, really key to understand, you know, what that impact you want to make is, but at the same time, not invalidate the impact of someone else, right? Like here's an example. You know, my parents really wanted me to be a teacher. I was for 2 years. I was miserable. I didn't like it. So I say, hey, you know, like I really can appreciate your dream. And that's awesome. You know, like you guys have really done some great things. It's not my dream though. So I appreciate where you're coming from there. I appreciate that you have that, but I'm going to pursue my own dream. And I think that's really, really, really important to be able to come from it from that angle.
And so a big part of the book as well, and I was reading this in the description too, in terms of, and you've just kind of identified that, but the fact that the book really has a play on this idea that success isn't necessarily what we've been led to believe. And having said that, I mean, I understand, of course, it can be, but what I mean is that society defines it as one specific thing. And yet, like you've experienced, as you said, Jeremy, and I know I have, interviewing all these people, what I've discovered is almost every one of them defines their own success differently versus one central definition. And, you know, Bob Dylan, there was a definition of success he gave that always spoke to me. And it kind of laid the groundwork for me thinking about success being something different to me. And what he said was that if a man, and of course the quotes always said man, but a man or a woman, I'll add in the or woman, go to bed at night and in between the hours that they sleep. So in the hours that they're awake.
But it was more like if a man or a woman in the hours that they sleep. No, continue.
So if a man or a woman goes to bed at night and then wakes up in the morning, and in between the hours while they're awake, they do that which they love most of the day, that's success.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that that's pretty close to my definition now. But when I started, it was like you. I mean, I was told I lived in a small town, so I was told what society said success was. And so it seems like this book will help people understand that it doesn't have to be what somebody else tells you it can be or should be. Mm-hmm. At the same time, here's a roadmap for how you can carve your own success out. Is that part of what a person will get from the book?
Well, and the thing about it as well is it's a journey of self-discovery too. And that's, you know, really what I'm talking about in the book is, you know, like I did a lot of different things and a lot of people I've talked to have done a lot of different things, and you keep working at it and working at it and working at it, and you get there. Do you know what I mean? Like I failed at network marketing, but I learned a lot. I failed at selling life insurance, but I learned a lot. I failed at selling products on Amazon. I can't believe I did that. Because I basically gave away all my products by mistake. But I learned a lot from that. So like, I think the thing to realize is that first thing doesn't have to be the thing that is your purpose, but you continue to work it out and work it out and work it out until you get closer to that. And that's where your greatness comes in, man, because you're not going to know it out of the gate. You're not. I feel like internet marketing has made us really bad and jaded about this. Like there's always a story where someone's on their couch and then they discover something and all of a sudden they're like a multi-gazillionaire and blah, 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 blah. And look at me smiling in all these photos. But they don't realize everything that someone had to do to get there. And I think that's where the real value is. And that's why you find out what you actually love and what you do enjoy doing, between the hours you're awake, Bob Dylan.
Well, and I love that when you say that about what people don't realize. I think we even maybe talked about this a bit when I was on your show.
Yeah,
but this idea,
which is coming out tomorrow, by the way.
Oh, wow. Awesome. I love it. I didn't realize that. I'd love to know that. Very cool. I'll make sure that we share that far and wide. And, one of the things I think we talked about was this whole idea of an overnight success. And I had mentioned to you, I believe, I'm going by memory, but I have usually pretty good memory, about the band, the Barenaked Ladies, the Canadian band,
yeah.
10-year run and top 10 hits for years, considered one of the biggest bands of Canada. And then they started breaking into the US with their song One Week. And I watched a guy interviewing all these people that were at their concert, and they said, what do you think of this band? Oh, they're awesome. You like this new band? Yeah. Would I surprise you if I told you they've been around for over 10 years? And the people like, get out of here, bud. And again, people didn't see all the work it took them to get to this one US hit. Or Gary Vee, who you and I think we chatted about, on the forums every night till 4 a.m, working his butt off for 5 years before anybody really knew who Gary Vee was. Mm-hmm. People don't see below the iceberg.
Well, and I'll say too, the Weird Al Yankovic version of One Week is way better than the Barenaked Ladies version. The song is called Jerry Springer. It is hilarious.
I'm going to have to check that out. And I will, a little fun fact for people that might say, I don't really know if I know who this band, the Barenaked Ladies, is. If you've ever watched The Big Bang Theory, you know who the Barenaked Ladies is. Because the theme song for The Big Bang Theory is sung by and written by the Barenaked Ladies.
Yes.
Little
But so, you were talking about, Gary Vee and like a lot of the work kind of being in silence. And I feel like, especially with social media, where we want to see like every little aspect of someone's life, it becomes harder to show the process because we want everything to look good. And I know, like, for me, like, this isn't intentional, but I suck at doing stories and stuff like that. Like, I'm just not very good at it. Cause for me, like, I could show you my schedule today, dude. Like, my calendar today, like, kind of makes me want to cry. Like, I have no breathing room in this calendar all day today, but that's not exciting to show on Instagram because I can't explain what every of those things mean, but it's about the hustle and the grind of working it out. So I feel like we go with what's sexy and what looks good and what looks interesting, a lot of times rather than actually holding true to the story.
And so now when you say storytelling, I mean, this is a follow-up to the content in the book, but how much of the book would you say is storytelling in nature? Because I noticed as well on your Publishizer page, you talked about sharing the stories of some of these influencers that you've interviewed. So how much of the book will be that storytelling style that we may see in Think and Grow Rich or How to Win Friends and books like that?
So the way that I'm doing this, and this could sound crazy, but I've written a lot of the book before adding the stories because I find that too often people try to base the book on the stories when actually the stories are the supporting information, right? Like, like I've learned a lot of these concepts. So really what I'm doing is I'm talking about these concepts and then bringing in the stories that help them become real and make more sense to people. So that's kind of the way I'm exploring it. And I guess it's because of like the history background I come from, right? Like, that's how you write a history paper is you write your ideas and your narrative, and then you find the supporting information. And that's kind of what this project has been like for me to kind of show that and really make it make sense.
And now you already have a publishizer for the book as well. Or sorry, publishizer. You already have a publisher for the book as well.
Yes.
Are you able to share that name? I guess it's on.
Yeah, it's right on the page. We're working with Lifestyle Entrepreneur Press. My good friend, Jesse Krieger. Super excited to be working with this. And we're doing this in a different way because I came to the publisher first and they said, let's use Publishizer. So we're trying to kind of change the game there as well in how we do this. So it is a little bit of a different concept even than how Publishizer typically works.
And so, Jeremy, as we wind down, for those that want to know more about the whole campaign, and and some people may be discovering even crowdfunding still for the first time, especially for a book. And I do have a question here I wanted to address, but I'll Yvonne, if you're there, I'll circle back to your question in a couple of minutes here when we're finishing off. But just to keep us on this momentum, Jeremy, why? I mean, for a person that's wanting to grab a copy, can you tell them a little bit about the idea of crowdfunding and maybe the rewards or bonuses people can get and stuff like that, just so they can get a feel for what this looks like? And then we already told them how they can find it, which we'll mention again at the end.
Yeah. Well, first off, it'd be cool if I answer Yvonne's question. Because I see, hey, Yvonne King, I see you there. You say, what is the name of Jeremy's podcast? It's called the Create Your Own Life Show. So you can go to createyourownlife.com or jeremyryanslate.com and you can check that out there. So thank you so much for saying that, Yvonne. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun with my podcast. So, you know, in the crowdfunding offer, the reason it's a little bit different is because we offer some cool bonuses that we wouldn't typically do. So you can grab a pre-order copy of the book, which is awesome, or an audiobook if you're like me and you're more of an auditory learner. But at the same time, let's say you have a podcast and you want to learn, how do I interview celebrities? Because I've, you know, not to toot my own horn, but I've interviewed a ton. So I've created a process around how to actually get people to say yes to that interview. So one of the things we're going to be offering is a masterclass on how to actually interview celebrities and get them to come on your podcast or YouTube show or whatever it may be. Or let's say you have a podcast and you want to find out how you level up or how you set everything up right. I'll actually sit down with you one-on-one and go over that. Or if you're like, hey, man, like I want attention, I want to get out there and grow, but I don't want to start a podcast. We have something called the Entrepreneur Accelerator, which we will actually get you booked on 3 podcasts, create a media kit for you, teach you how to repurpose your content. You go through an entire coaching and media training process with our team. So we're really going to set you up to be in a different PR and media position than you were before you came to us, to really set you up for that next level of growth. So any one of those things are actually going to support the launch of the campaign, in addition to, depending on which one you grab, you're going to have a whole bunch of books you can share with your community as well.
And just as a side note, which is a related side note, I actually grabbed the masterclass one myself. And
you did.
Well, you know, why would you grab the masterclass one if you're also doing interviews with high achievers? But I don't know if you think this way, Jeremy, but I always believe every day I learn something new. And if I learn one tip from something you do that I haven't been doing, that can be the difference between me landing insert name here, you know?
100%.
I have a list, the top 100 list still. I always constantly recreate my top 100 list. And now I'm really leaning more towards wanting to get specific celebrities on the show. Like, so it could be like Kate Hudson or Kate Holmes. But the thing is, you might say something there that I might be able to take into what I'm doing and merge the two of them and get that one guest that I haven't been able to get. And so what I'm getting at is I've invested in it as somebody who's doing these interviews all the time. So that's how much I believe in the power of a masterclass like that. Because everybody always asks me, I'm sure they do as you as well, especially in a world where there's so many podcasters, how are you getting these big names on your show? Why not learn it from the source?
Absolutely. And you know, the 12-year-old little boy drummer in me still wants to have Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters as my number one guest. So eventually, hopefully I will get there. I've talked to his agent like almost every other month. We just haven't gotten it done yet.
Wow. And I've watched your posts about it. And I think I saw one recently where you said part of the reason I want Dave Grohl on is because he's not just a great musician and et cetera, but he's also a super funny dude.
Oh my, did you see the coffee addicts thing he's got?
No, I didn't.
So look,
look
at the video. And for people watching this, you know, Google Dave Grohl coffee addiction. He did this spoof video about having coffee addiction, and then the drug that they made to break his coffee addiction. And he spends like 3.5 minutes talking about what the side effects are of this drug to break him of his coffee addiction. And I'm trying to remember the funniest one was called Cyrus virus, that you suddenly become Miley Cyrus or Billy Ray Cyrus. So you may grow a mullet or something. It was hilarious.
I love that. It's so funny. Whenever I first heard the song Big Me by Foo Fighters when it came out, not the song, but the video, as soon as I saw the video, I said, you know, I know this guy is just a naturally funny dude.
Yeah, he seems like somebody you want to hang out and have a beer with.
Absolutely. And Trish said good morning to us. And
hey, Trish.
And Yvonne came back and said, the first thing I did was create a list of people I want on my podcast.
Oh, that's awesome, Yvonne. That's the way you got to start.
Yeah, it's a great start. And I feel like also it doesn't just give you direction and purpose, but if people say you're only going to reach 5 of those people and you reach 10, that changes your confidence like you wouldn't believe. I say that because when I first asked people on my top 100 list, people like, you're not going to get 8 of those people. And so that became a driving force for me. Everybody works different, but that was a driving force for me to say, you know what, let me see what's possible. Not to show anybody wrong, but just let me see what's possible. So, Jeremy, I guess as we wind down, as far as the book, so we talked about why crowdfunding, we talked about why Publishizer, we talked about what people can get when they jump on board and support your launch. And I think that's the last thing I want to say is that people might say, well, why would I do this? How's it different than if he's doing a book launch or what have you, meaning like a traditional on Amazon book launch? I really feel the big thing is you're helping support this book come to life. Like that's the whole idea behind crowdfunding is people have crowdfunded platforms that could change the world, and they ended up existing because so many people jumped in and supported it.
Yep.
A friend, I think a mutual friend of ours, John Lee Dumas, launched his book called The Freedom Journal. He was one of the first people I know who did a crowdfunder for his book. And his whole idea was, I want to see how many people are interested in this, but I also want to be able to fund it to bring it to more people than I could otherwise. Yeah. And so having said that, I think that's the part that sometimes get lost is this isn't just like go on Amazon to grab a book. This is also, you're helping it, make it possible for Jeremy to not only have a bigger launch, but impact more lives with this book because you now are part of the family that supported the book. And then you're getting these rewards because you were kind of like a founder early in on the stages. So I think all the elements of crowdfunding apply to a book as well. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but that's why I like crowdfunders.
Well, it brings power to the people, man. Like people can choose what they want to happen and what they want to become real and have a huge part in that. I think that's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. So, Jeremy, in closing, what would you recommend to people if they are sitting on the fence or if they're saying, what do I do next? I mean, because we said where the website was and we could say it again and it is in the comments, but what would you say to people in terms of why they need to jump on board and make this happen?
So I would say, honestly, that, being extraordinary is something you can do and you are extraordinary. You just got to figure out, for yourself, really what that is. And in this book, we're going to help set you up so that you can really create your own definition of extraordinary. And, if you want to, jump in and grab one of those cool offers as well, these are things that we don't typically offer. And I would love to help you with that as well. So, really help me to help more people become extraordinary.
Love it. And so it's publishizer.com /extraordinary.
That's correct.
Go again. If the link's in the comments, I'll make sure to put it on my main page once we're done here. What I love too, Jeremy, is you just summed up to me what a person gets from the book. They can move closer to extraordinary, become the best version of themselves. And when I put my book out, I struggled with this, but I said I'm not going to release it unless I know there's what are you going to take from this that I can share instantly. And so with my book, the Book of Why and How, what I wanted to show you is here's how you can find your why. And once we talk about this in our interview, and here's what you can do with it once you do. I think the book has to have a tangible, here's what I'm going to get when I leave. And yours, I think a big part is what is really success? What the fact that it isn't just what society tells you. And then once you know what that is, you can decide what it is for you and then go and become extraordinary.
100%, man.
So if people can get that from a book that costs them what works out to probably as little or less than $20 a copy, whether they go through whatever reward they take of yours, it probably works out to less than $20 a book or around $20 a book. And for $20, if you can learn how to become extraordinary, that seems like a pretty low cost deal to me.
I would agree 100%, man. This is the thing to think about. It's taken me 5 years and thousands of hours to put this all together, and you can get it for $25 in the few hours it's going to take you to read it. Like, come on now, that's an amazing deal.
Well, I already told you I'm sold. So Jeremy, it's been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so much. We're live now, but if you're watching in the replay, which happens a lot in the world we're in today, feel free to give us a shout out, ask any questions you have for me or Jeremy, and I'll make sure to share this over the next couple of days so people know how they can grab themselves a copy of the book and why they should bother. So thanks, Jeremy Slate. Been an absolute pleasure.